Two people can earn the exact same income, live in the exact same city, sit across from each other at the same table, and walk toward two completely different financial futures. Neither of them will ever know why. One of them is reading a signal the other was never told exists. It has almost nothing to do with the money itself, and everything to do with what each of them has quietly trained their mind to notice. You were taught that the gap comes down to opportunity, luck, or discipline. It's a comfortable story because it doesn't ask anything uncomfortable of you. If the difference were simply trying harder, working harder would have closed it by now. But you already know people who grind relentlessly, year after year, and stay exactly where they started. You've probably felt that exhaustion yourself, the sense that effort should have bought you more than it did by now. Effort is loud, outcome is quiet, and somewhere in that silence, one group learned to read a signal the other group was never even shown how to look for. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote something that explains this better than any modern finance book ever has. Everyone sees what you appear to be, but almost no one perceives what you actually are. He was writing about power, but without knowing it, he was also describing money. The wealthy are not smarter than you. They are not working some system you've been locked out of by circumstance. They simply stopped confusing how something looks with what it actually does, and that one correction made early enough changes every decision that follows it for the rest of a lifetime. This isn't folklore either. Researchers Sendhil, Mullainathan, and Eldar Shafir spent years studying what financial pressure actually does to the brain, and the finding is uncomfortable to sit with. Scarcity doesn't just drain your bank account, it narrows your attention. It forces your mind to fixate so hard on the next bill, the next shortfall, the next visible threat, that you lose the bandwidth to notice slower, quieter patterns forming underneath. The ones wealth is actually built from. Scarcity doesn't only cost you money. It costs you the ability to see, and you rarely notice the cost until years after it's been paid. None of this is written on a whiteboard anywhere. Nobody sits you down and explains it, because the people who already understand it rarely have a reason to say it out loud. It gets passed down quietly, absorbed by proximity, or discovered the hard way, alone, usually much later than anyone would like. So look at what you were never shown. The first pattern is the invisible ledger. You track what you earn and what you spend, the numbers that show up on a statement. The wealthy track something else entirely, what a decision costs them 5 years from now, not 5 minutes from now. Every yes is quietly logged against a future they can already picture in detail. You feel the sting of spending in the moment. They feel the absence of an asset they failed to protect, long before that absence becomes visible to anyone else. The cost of never keeping this ledger isn't debt, it's subtler than that. It's a life that stays permanently reactive, forever responding to now instead of designing later. Every dollar either builds a future self or quietly erases one. There is no neutral spending, no matter how small it feels in the moment. Which one have your last 10 decisions actually been building? The second pattern is comfort camouflage. You were taught that stability looks like a steady paycheck and a familiar routine you complain about but never quite leave. It feels safe. It feels responsible, even. But comfort and security are rarely the same thing, and confusing them is precisely how entire decades disappear without anyone noticing they're gone. The wealthy treat comfort with open suspicion, not because they enjoy discomfort for its own sake, but because they've learned, often the hard way, that comfort is frequently just risk wearing a very convincing disguise. The real cost of mistaking one for the other stays invisible for years, right up until the moment it becomes too late to reverse. What would you have to admit to yourself if the very thing keeping you safe is the exact thing keeping you stuck? The third pattern is the applause trap. Certain spending exists purely to be witnessed. The car, the upgrade, the vacation that announces itself before anyone even asks how you're doing. It feels like success because other people react to it, and that reaction feels like proof. But the people most convincing you they've already made it are frequently the most leveraged, the most exposed, the ones one bad month away from the illusion collapsing entirely. Visibility and value have never been the same currency. The wealthy learned, sometimes painfully, to stop performing for an audience that was never going to pay their bills for them. If nobody were watching, would you still make the exact same choice? The fourth pattern is borrowed urgency. Somewhere along the way you absorbed a version of urgency that was never actually yours. Someone else's deadline, someone else's comparison, someone else's private idea of how far along you should be by now. That borrowed pressure pushes you into decisions that quietly serve a timeline you didn't set and never agreed to. It has you rushing toward outcomes that matter to someone else's story, not yours. The wealthy, at some point, built their own clock and simply refused to keep running on anyone else's. What deadline are you currently obeying that was never actually yours to begin with? The fifth pattern is silent compounding. Growth that actually matters almost never looks dramatic while it's happening. It looks like nothing at all, the same modest, unremarkable decision, repeated quietly, unnoticed for years on end. This is exactly why most people abandon it halfway through. It offers no applause, no immediate proof, nothing to show anyone in the moment it's being made. But the invisible years are precisely where the outcome is actually being built, and the wealthy made peace with looking unimpressive for a very long time before anyone else could see the result. If wealth genuinely requires being boring before it lets you be free, are you actually willing to be boring? The sixth pattern is the identity ceiling, the quietest one, and by far the most expensive. Somewhere in your history, you formed a private idea of how much money someone like you is supposed to have. You may never have said it out loud, may not even be fully aware it exists, but it governs almost every financial decision you make, quietly sabotaging progress the exact moment it threatens to exceed what you secretly believe you deserve. The wealthy didn't start out with more confidence than you. They simply refused to let an old, borrowed identity put a ceiling on a new outcome. Now consider something you've probably never questioned, because questioning it would mean admitting how much time it's already cost you. You've been told that being busy proves you're doing something right, full calendars, constant motion, no time left over to think. But busyness is frequently not evidence of progress at all. It's a hiding place, dressed up as productivity. It's far easier to stay in motion than to sit still long enough to face whether any of that motion is actually taking you somewhere. The people quietly building real wealth are rarely the busiest people in the room. More often, they're the stillest, because stillness is exactly where these patterns finally become visible, and once you see them clearly, pretending you didn't becomes impossible. You don't need another tip today. You need to decide which side of this you intend to stand on, the side that keeps reacting to what's visible, or the side that quietly studies what isn't. That decision doesn't require more income, and it doesn't require permission from anyone. It requires looking at your own decisions the way a strategist studies a board, several moves ahead, unmoved by whatever merely looks impressive right now. Nothing about your paycheck has to change this week for that shift to begin. Only your attention does, starting with the very next decision in front of you. Machiavelli warned that people are so simple and so obedient to immediate necessity that a deceiver will always find someone willing to be deceived. The most dangerous deception you will ever face isn't run by anyone else. It's the one your own eyes perform on you daily, quietly convincing you that what glitters is what matters, and that whatever stays quiet isn't working. The people who eventually see all of this don't get there because they became someone else. They get there because they finally stopped rehearsing the same blindness and started asking a harder, quieter question about every decision they used to make on autopilot. You were never poor because of what you lacked. You were poor because of where you were trained to look, and you kept looking there, long after it stopped giving you any real answers.